The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everybody. We are back. Town Hall Cafe 2019. Do you believe it?
I know.
Well, it's crazy. It's a lot, and it's crazy, but it's wonderful. It's good. We're moving forward. We're doing what we need to do. And today is our episode. Today is a very special day. We have Mr. Jamal Jones is back with us from our community, and as usual, our co-producer Lanice. Yes. I don't know why I can't. It's like that A. Where did you get that A from?
It's just my mom wanted me to be the beginning of
everything.
Of the
class.
Yeah,
your mother's smart. So we're just going to be here today, and there's a lot of things going on in our community, outside of our community, and this is an informative podcast. So I want to just open up with something that I that ran across my desk during Black History Month, and it goes like this. It's a quote. Whenever I see an opportunity and a chance to change something, I go at it and lay out all the facts to everybody. And when I come to this space, I'm going to come with talent and I'm going to come with focus. And that's by Bob Johnson, the former owner of BET. So that's going to open up our podcast today, and our podcast is dedicated to catching up with our neighborhood. So the first order of business, I'm going to introduce Mr. Jamal Jones, and to recap who you are and what do you do, and all that kind of good stuff.
Okay, well, my day job, social worker with LA County. I've been doing that for 15 years. It's a good job in that I feel you get to get out and see an experience of every kind of individual, be race, socioeconomic. Everyone's dealing with similar situations, especially when it's coming to children. But you get to go into their homes and see how they're living, and you see how there's a lot more that unites us more than you think. So that's good. But what divides us is economics. That's one of that's the consistent theme that I see with the clients. I love that part of the job. Then I'm also a volunteer on the board for the neighborhood council. I'm the area rep for Leimert Park. So there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Well,
change and just
well, thank you for coming back and being a part of our talk here. And you, and who are you? I think we know who you are, but just recap it. Who you are and what you do.
I'm your sidekick, I wish I was famous. I'm your sidekick and jack of all trades, master of none. But during the day, I am the president of the International Black Restaurant and Hospitality Association.
Wonderful.
Also, I do marketing consulting, strategic planning in regards to that for businesses that are at mid to large scale. So I get the opportunity, like he said, to even see it on the business side. There's not much that divides us but economics. And so everyone has the same struggles. Everyone has the same hopes. Everyone wants to achieve the same type of success. It's just everyone is kind of dealt a different set of cards, and they're trying to figure out how to play the best hand that they're dealt. And so what ends up happening is what I'm noticing a lot in this world or political climate that we're in right now is that there's a lot of manipulation tactics to kind of get you to either play a different hand or to throw in your hand. But if we can keep everyone, clear, level-headed, more trustworthy of each other. I say to be friendly, present yourself friendly. I think that we can have a positive impact.
What would be one, what would be one warning sign that you would give our children that's growing up, or to the parents as you see it, in the real world and the adult world, and you see, even your daughter, that's coming up? What would be like a warning sign to the future?
Well, I guess it's an opinion more than anything, but I think I would just tell people to be cognizant that more is not always better. Okay. And I think we're in a society right now where we're just in sensory overload. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting information, which is good because it leaves us, quote unquote, woke or, conscious and aware of what's going on. But also in the process, we see high levels of anxiety, depression, increased difficulties with mental health and being able to sustain ourselves up under pressure. There's a comedian that committed suicide this past weekend, and just so many things are happening in the world. And I think that when you have too much going on and it's coming at you at one time on top of the regular pressures that you have in life, then you have this proclivity. If you already don't know how to manage well and you already are feeling a little hopeless, you can go deeper in the hole. So I tell people now, you just have to have a cutoff switch. You can't save everyone. You can't save the world overnight. This has been a long time coming. It's been in the making for quite a while. And so, we can't, fix something that has been 20, 30 years in the making, in the next year or two. And, everyone thinks that the world can change in 2020. And, I'm trying to give people that sobering wake up call that things are not going to change in 2020. So if you're banking on thinking that a new president will change things, or a new coalition, or a new set of people that are in office, this is a generation in the making. And it's just now starting to fester, And so the changes that we want to see and we want to make, it's going to be like planting a tree. You're going to have to know that you just put it in the ground and you keep watering, but that oak may not show up for another 30, 40, 50 years. Right. So.
And Jamal, you're a social worker. So what is the mental, what are the mental steps that we need to take a hold on, in this era that we're in terms of how do we deal with this, compared to, I know this might be a heavy question, but compared to generations before, like your parents' generation, my parents' generation, with the civil rights and the Black Panther movement and that was one set of ideas, but we're not there anymore. We're here in the 21st century, and, just to navigate all this and keep your mental aptitude up and to be able to deal with that. What things have you found out in your work?
Well, it goes back to, poverty is one of the things that I think of. So one of our kids now, our newer generation of children, is like, what's in the future for them? And I see a lot of situations where people are worrying. There's a lot more depression. There's more worry about, how am I going to make it? How am I going to afford my rent? How am I going to be able to feed my kids? How am I going to sustain this program that the county has hooked me up with, and I know in 6 months I'm going to be back out on the street because it's rising the rent up back to market, even though it's supposed to help me. Like, these are situations that people are stressing out about, and then the kids are being, that stress is being put back on that kid because the parent is stressed out. So the parent might be absent because then the parent is out there running around doing this. So who's raising the kid? The kid becomes independent in young age and is cooking for themselves and they don't have that parent or that development that's there. So then they're going to be susceptible to things where influence of things in society that are going on that kid, be it social media, things that kids are seeing. But where's that parent to kind of teach them right and wrong? That parent is absent. So one of the things that I would tell a child, or what I would worry, I wouldn't say tell a child, one of the things that concerns me for the future for our younger people is where the job's going to be. Like, are people going? Is there going to be a parent in the house? Like, we talk about this all the time. The 2-parent home is absent. You saw that back in the day, where the dad could raise the kid, the dad could take care of the home, and the mom was at home. Vice versa, if we wanted to do that in nowadays, it's equality and everything like that. Yeah. But the system is not set up to have a two-parent, I'm not two-parent, but to have a parent in the home. Like, just doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, there's not anything in the system to have a parent in the home anymore.
A parent in the home. So
one or both.
Now there's child care and all this other stuff that's raising your kid.
Right.
And I don't understand. That's the problem for me because there's no jobs out there where you can allow a parent, be it the mom or the dad, to stay home and be with the kid to a certain age, and then they can go to work. But society is getting away from that, and then it's getting worse because now there's what jobs are going to be able to even sustain it where people can even have a kid. Because I hear younger people at 24, 25 talking about, I don't even want kids. And I'm like, why? Because if I have a kid, I'm not going to be able to afford rent. I'm not going to be afford to take care of the kid properly. I'm not going to be doing anything. So the future right now for me, not to be negative, it's bleak until I start hearing someone talking about how we're going to start investing in people to give them opportunities so that we can go back to where you can actually put them in a good school, do all this other stuff. But what we're dealing with DCFS at my job is we're band-aiding all these situations where all these these parents are using meth, self-medicating, all this other stuff because of all these other issues. And the kids are being inflicted on that. And then you're having a generation of kids that are resorting to crime because crime is all they can do to try to feed themselves. With, so the prison population is going up because that's just people are desperate. But I don't hear this conversation. So that's what I talk to the younger kids, teenagers, whatever that come in, is think about what the future is going to be and think about jobs, think about what you can do because it's a different world. It's harder for them than it was for me. And then every generation says, it's going to be hard. It was hard when I was there. Right. No, it's harder than anyone for this new generation. So it's scary.
Especially in the city of Los Angeles because you can't become that next 56,000 homeless.
You saw that article, right? Did you see it? The one we were talking about?
Is it more than 56,000?
Actually, it's on tonight. I forgot to probably record it. Yeah. But tonight, I think CBS is doing a special where they're going to talk about the new homeless, what it looks like, the new generation of homeless, where there's people working and they're just living in their cars, but they're just like you or me. Right. So doing this whole piece on it, and they were talking about how from 2010 to 2018. The rents have gone up 84%, but then wages have only gone up 11%.
Right, do the math.
But that's not just here; that's everywhere.
Everywhere around the
country.
So
it's like, I don't. But again, with these candidates that are running for president, I don't hear.
Let's segue.
I don't hear this conversation. I hear about development and building up the cities and building up infrastructure. That's all I hear, but I don't hear about that. Right. So. Right.
Well, that's a good. Well, that's a little good segue to. We have all these politicians who are running now, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and I don't know. I mean, everybody is, they look really cool and fun. But what is this going to mean trickling down to our community? I mean, we're looking at policy changing. Like the scenario that you just mentioned, Jamal, is that, okay, how is that going to be trickling down to our communities? I mean, how are we? Because I don't hear any of the so-called candidates now. I shouldn't call them so-called, but they're not talking jobs. They're not talking policies. They're not talking health care. And how can you have an unhealthy populace that's jobless?
Well, because we're looking at first, I guess. We don't know who to blame. What came first, the chicken or the egg? So I feel like the politicians are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Right. Because, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about knowing how to turn off the noise that's going on around us in society. Politicians now are under so much pressure. Pro-woman, pro-victim, pro-immigration, pro-climate control. I mean, there's just so many things that are at them. If they speak to it and don't speak to the core issues, then they're, in a bad place. If they don't speak to the popular issues or the popular sound bites, then they're demonized, And so it's very difficult for them to be able to tackle everything and then still be able to remain relevant and competitive. But that's why it goes back to what I try to tell adults in this situation, because the younger people, they're going to feed off of our energy. Right. If we're panicked, they're going to panic, And so as adults, we have to have enough sense to say, when I go and I talk to business owners and things in the communities, you can't rely on the government or the political landscape to define the future of you and your family and your employees. You have to go back to old school guerrilla tactics of one-on-one engagement within your community. That's the only way you're going to be able to survive at this point. That's how people have been able, they get in these individual silos, and these silos continue to grow and to maintain itself. If not, you'll be pulled, let's just take a business owner. I want to pay my employees $15 an hour.
Sure.
I can't afford to pay my employees $15 an hour. I'm trying to keep my business, and I'm working a day job, and I have family members too. And then I have to look at victims' rights. And so now I have to put extra cameras in my facility. And now I have to make sure I hire enough women. Do I have immigrants? If I do, are they documented? Do I tell on them, or do I help them by not telling on them and continuing to hire them? There are so many things just on the most basic level that are pulling people that I wouldn't expect it of a politician at this time. Now, what I do expect it from is those congressional people who have been there for years, and they have continued to make policies. When you've been, speaker, when you've been, majority whip, when you've been in these positions, the longest running, longest serving, most senior, then absolutely I should. But I think this new group, we should not have any expectations, because what they're running against right now is a ideology, and they're not going to have time to fight the ideology and deal with the core issues. So it's literally a every man for himself, God for us all scenario. I'm in a community with single moms. So what can I do in this community of single moms? Jamal may be in a community of single professionals. What can he do to rally this group of professionals? What can you do to maybe for your generation or people within the entertainment industry? I think if everyone just gets in their silos and tries to work that area that they're in, maybe we can have more traction, because just looking at the big mass picture,
it doesn't look good.
It's not going to work.
Or does it?
I mean, the thing is that to understand where we're going to go, you got to look in the past, and history is just repeating itself. I know, the first time when you look at some of these issues, you look at like us having the right to vote as Black people. But why? What was that for? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, was it because, they really wanted us to vote? No, it was like a tactic in order for them to get folks in office. So let's look at that with what's going on with immigration. I talk about this at work all the time. It makes me sick because there's Republicans and there's Democrats. I say this all the time, but it's two sides of the same coin, and the thing that really upsets me is that they're playing politics, and they're trying to, immigration. Let me go back. So when you look at some of the sound bites and you look at some of the interviews when the Democrats are in office, and then if you were to just transcribe them and say, okay, I don't know who wrote this, but transcribe it, and then read it today, and you say, who wrote that? They would say Trump did. But then you're like, no. Those were Democrats who were saying this. The same things in regard to immigration, the same information, same everything. But now the Republicans are in office, so now they're going, they're locking them up, they're locking children up, they're putting them in cages and all this other stuff. This was happening when Democrats were in office. So the reason I bring this up is everyone has to be careful, because they're playing politics, because at the end of the day, it's votes. That's the thing. So basically, if we can appeal to the Latinos, and we can appeal and say, hey, immigration and the poor people and all this other stuff. Go a couple years ago and listen how they were talking about the poor people. Right. All these people are coming over here illegally and all this other Democrats. Right. So I'm using this as an example because they do it with every race and they do it with LGBT, Black people, everything. Right. So you have to be wary of what's going on, because what we're seeing is they're going after the Republicans. With this issue, but again, it's like, don't be a hypocrite, because so what are you going to do about it? That's the thing. Are you hearing a solution? That's the thing. Are we hearing a solution being proposed? Because there's this wall situation. Right. But I saw a soundbite where a couple years ago that the Dems had voted that they wanted a 300 extension of the wall, 300 miles or something, and now what's before them is 200 miles. So it's like they voted to extend the wall, but now they're acting like, Look what he's trying to do. Look at it. This is where you got to really look at what's happening, using that as an example with both sides. Mm-hmm. Are they just using this as a tactic? So when they do get in, my question is, what are you going to do then? What is immigration reform going to look like when you get in? I tell people all the time, I guarantee you, nothing's going to change. It's just a political situation. Mm-hmm. So don't get played. And so another thing I'm thinking about now is the common ground. So that's what they're doing. Like when Trump got in there, the dude was a Democrat, a liberal, before he got in, and he ran as a Republican. He's playing to a base. Right. The Democrats, if you listen to them, are playing to a base. When you see them talking, they're always like, the Republicans will never do this and never do that. So they're creating a divide. Mm-hmm. And common ground is one thing I wrote about. I was talking to one of my friends. The candidate that's going to be successful in the United States or any kind of politics is going to be the common ground person, because there's LGBT, there's women, all these other issues, and she's the economic businesswoman right here. Mm-hmm. So that is something that is a common ground. Everyone needs to feed their children. That's right. Everybody needs to put food on the table and send their kids to a good school. It doesn't matter what race they are. It doesn't matter what sexuality they are. It doesn't matter if they're white, black, Asian. There's that common ground, and you don't see them speaking to that. So they can't. You know why? Because they're playing these political games to create their bases to get them in, so they can say the Republicans are for that wall. We're not for that wall. Right. They're for that wall. Mm-hmm. The Republicans put people in cages. Mm-hmm. We don't put people in cages. And you're like, wait a minute. Just a couple of years, you guys do the same thing. Yeah. So this is.
But I think we need to approach it. What I liked about how Dr. King approached it, he knew that they were going to try to play us. He knew they would bring him in. They would talk. They would play games with him. But he had to do it incremental. And you don't have kids. I have kids, but we both are hungry, so we both want to have food on the table. So, okay, maybe we need to start with, like how he said, we're going to boycott buses. Right. We need y'all to fix the buses first, then from the buses, we move here and we move here. So he incrementally pulled things that he wanted until he said, well, you're going to play us, but we're going to get things that we want while we're getting played. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to empower people within the community, whether you're a business owner or you're going to work 9 to 5, because I do both, but I tell people that what can we start to charge first our city council people with, just small things. We're driving up and down these streets after we've had a massive rain here in Southern California, and the holes are horrific. They're swallowing up cars like you're in a movie, Right. So that's the first thing. How do we approach this situation with, we want to deal with homelessness, but yet you have people who can only afford to get an RV, but they have nowhere to park their RV. You get resistance if you park here. You get tickets if you park over there. There was a lady that hopefully she's a part of this documentary. She was living under the Venice canals. This lady goes to work every day. She has a car, but she also charges the bird scooters and the Lime scooters. Mm-hmm. She found a plug up under the Venice Canal. Mm-hmm. So she goes there at night, charges all the scooters, sleeps. It was keeping dry from the rain so that, she could take these scooters back. The people found out in the neighborhood, and they're like, she can't stay here. She'll bring more people. And then they got on the news and they said somebody should help her. And I'm like, who? She's going to work every day. She's the working poor. She has a side gig. She doesn't have children. She doesn't have a drug problem. She doesn't have a record. She's quiet. She's not begging for money. She's not vandalizing. But people found her when the tourists started walking, when things got dry. So we have to deal with things in our individual states. If you're in Texas and you're close to the border wall, which a lot of people down there don't even want who's in the area that are from America. You have people in New York with issues of not wanting Amazon to come to the city. Right. You have people in Chicago who are dealing with, crime everywhere. You got meth in the Midwest. Everyone has to start approaching their local government, and then they move up to their state government, and then have that trickle effect. Because right now we're going to keep getting played. We have these big things. Oh, this is what's going on in China this weekend. And this is what's happening with North Korea. This is what he said he's going to Vietnam to do. And what happens is we get caught up in that, and we're missing the everyday things that are happening around us. Why? I asked a simple question. California went on a strike. and our children were out of school for 2 weeks, what is your plan to make up those 2 weeks? Are you going to add 2 weeks to the calendar in June? That's going to mess up parents who rely on summer programs and those things to be able to take care of their kids, or they send their children to sleepaway camps, because that's when they make up time. Are we looking at that on a local level? So I try to tell as many people around me to the different issues that affect them, know what to turn down and know what to turn up. Because if not, they'll keep throwing so many things in front of your face that your mind is full. Now you're depressed. Now you're anxious. And then you look up. You can't move.
To that next step.
Yes, I call it analysis paralysis. You get into this mode where it's like, I got to do something, but you have so many decisions. What do I do about myself? What do I do about my family? What do I do about my community? What is the government? How do I vote? What do I do? And it's all these things happen. Do I go back to school? Do I not go back to school? Do I have a side gig? Do I freelance? There's just so much noise now, Twitter and social media, television, podcasts, our type of radio shows. We're sometimes so informed that we're constipating our minds. And so now people are like, and then what do? They turn to coping mechanisms because after a while, sensory overload makes you shut down.
Right. And it's like you were saying, it's like developing some type of strategy. Because I think you made a very good analogy about Martin Luther King. And it wasn't just Martin Luther King. It was a movement. I mean, it was a strategized movement.
Yeah, they knew they were being played, and they talked about it. They said, well, no, if we're going to go sit in here and have a conversation, what are you going to give us? They knew they were being wiretapped. I mean, they knew, Malcolm X knew it. I mean, all the way back to Frederick Douglass. And I was looking at a fantastic documentary over the weekend, and please hopefully I don't get his name wrong, but I think his last name was Jennings, and he was on the Madison. He worked for Dolly Madison and the Madison Family Plantation. I think his last name was Jennings. Please forgive me if I get it wrong. But he was a slave. He was supposed to get set free when James Madison died. Turned out that Dolly Madison was so poor because they had rigged that whole election thing that she kept that whole, I call it harem of slaves, to keep her money coming in. Well, this guy strategically was like, fine, I'll go back to DC with you. I'll live up there. He got his job back at the White House. He served up under this leading congressman who he had found out had sympathy to slaves and had let his slaves go free. He strategically went and worked up under this man for another 17 years to be able to secure his freedom, and then saved up his own money. And this was maybe the 1800s to get maybe $300 to $400 to even give Dolly Madison to say, look, I even saved up my own money to help support you since I know you're in financial turmoil if you get me free. The man ended up only being free for another few more years before he died. But because he did it, all of the slaves up under him, the other 50, 60 slaves up under him, all got free. But he went back into slavery and he strategically made moves, so I feel like we have to do that just as a people. We have to figure out what can we do now strategically within our community to take advantage of whatever these resources we have out here and start holding from the local level. Us me and Jamal are both on the same city council, on the same neighborhood council, to the city, state, and until we start seeing some incremental changes. If not, they're going to play the game of keeping us all running in circles, and then who can kill who, because soon first it was black against brown, then now we have fallout between these women's movements, because there's infestation in that. LGBT now is up in arms with the Jussie Smollett situation, and him. So everyone is just now clawing at each other, and the Matrix is just standing back, offering pills. In the meantime,
I like that.
But that's what it's designed to do.
Right.
Because the thing is, it goes back to common ground. If every person in the United States, every individual, Republican, doesn't matter what party you subscribe to, came together around that common ground issue that's affecting everyone, that's the dangerous thing. And that's what I believe they don't want, because then all of a sudden you're not subscribing to either party. You're looking for somebody to come up with solutions. So, we're talking about what are the solutions going to be? We're going to, small businesses and all this other stuff. Okay, small businesses. But then you're competing with someone like Jeff Bezos, who's the richest man in the world. And how did he become the richest man in the world? Because he's lobbying to Washington.
Right.
So all the things. So they're allowing a lot of this stuff, the taxes that he doesn't pay, all these things that are going on with these corporations where our legislators are working on behalf of these people, which makes it for the small person to be able to compete. You can't compete. So that's where we need to say, okay, what are our people that are going to be in office? They need to be able to call this out, but they're afraid. Why are they afraid? Because this is their money. This is their bank. These are the people that are funding their campaigns. So it's hard for them to speak out against that. Namely, again, I mean, there's two candidates that I know of that, flip-flop on that, Booker and his pharmaceutical stuff as an example. But the only way this is going to change in the next generation, I believe, is waking up and that they're seeing what's happening now. And they're like, you know what? No, they call BS on everything. Like, this is BS. So to get this younger generation in there where they're not going to be susceptible to influence, they're going to actually work for the common ground and for the people. And then they're going to stop playing into these social issues and playing into the women's movement, LGBT. Yeah, that's justified. Everything's great. But we have to be careful not to create division, because when you start creating division and people are pushing this, doing this and doing that, but instead of finding the thing that unites everyone, that's what we need to do. Yeah. So the solutions is what we need to think of, is how are we going to create economic opportunity for people in communities when jobs are being fizzled out by automation. These are the things that are going on. What are the new jobs of the future going to look like? Because right now, the track that we're on now, it ain't looking good for the majority of people, which is back to the homeless situation. We've got homeless people coming to California. The politicians say, oh, we got a homeless problem because everybody's coming over here. Well, why are they not staying in their state? Because all the jobs are fizzling away and it's freezing cold. So if I'm going to be homeless, I'm going to come to California. They can't keep them in their state because there's no opportunities in that state. So back to what A was saying is that each respective state has to focus on what they can do to retain their people. But how are they going to do that when there's no jobs? So that's the thing. So are we pushing that? But when you're getting lobbied to by these big corporations that are fizzling out the little person, and you're letting this happen, then how can you go against the richest man in the world to be able to fight him? So Amazon not being in New York was a success for my book. LA failed because he's going to be here because he opened up another place over here. But it's the people have to understand that that's the devil. Like these are issues right now, and just because he's a liberal Democrat, we're not calling. You don't see that side calling them out, but we'll call out Walmart because they're Republicans, but we won't call out Jeff Bezos because Jeff Bezos, and he's equally devastating what's happening in society. So we got to push that. Healthcare is the same thing. Why does healthcare legislation look so bad? Because they're being lobbied to, and the healthcare industry is going to take a hit if they go to things like single payer or things like that. They won't allow it. So the politicians aren't going to allow it because they're being lobbied to by these pharmaceuticals and healthcare industry. So healthcare legislation is not going to make sense to the people. And that's what people got to understand. Like, of course it's not going to make sense. Of course they're not going to have things like single payer. Of course that's not going to happen because there's too much money. It's too much money in it. So until you get people that are like not thinking about money and thinking about people and saying that this is what we got to do, then things are going to change. But
society has created, to play devil's advocate here, so society has created this environment for us to be selfish. We're just in a selfish time. If nothing else, you're selfish when you can create your news feed to only put out shows that you like to see, and you only follow people that you want to follow that has your ideology. There's nothing in the culture now that breeds having a common ground. So my question is, or my thought is, can we be divided and still be united towards the same common goal? Like, you have two people that hate each other, but we both hate that, So can women do something as women, and can men do something as men in their individual silos that pushes an agenda that's for their individual silos, yet still knocks down the common target together? Because I feel like, okay, there's not going to be anybody in the next 20 to 25 years that will ever go against big multi-corporations. Their whole ideology is going to be, these are the people that are sustaining and keeping jobs and keeping America going forward. So I'm saying, okay, what do we do now? How do we look at what other nations have done to be able to sustain themselves, Or do we not look at what other nations are doing and we just create our own organic process? I feel like that because, okay, I'm not for or against Walmart, Jeff Bezos. I have a very unique perspective, I love the model of Asians. You know, I can say they come to this country. I spoke to a gentleman that I used to work with, and his words, well, two of them, their words stayed with me for the rest of them. One was from China. The other one, I believe, was from the Philippines. But they both said in their country, the king is the king. Who you get is who you get. You don't vote. You don't complain. You don't have rights. Right. How you feel doesn't matter. And yet they can create this massively wealthy society, even in Japan and other places. And they come to America. You never hear them saying, we don't have people that look like us on TV. And there's not equal representation for us inside of TV ads or in magazines and newspapers. There's not enough teachers that look like us in school. But yet they own everything, you know. They come here, they develop resources, they do some individual lobbying up under the table, possibly. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say that they do, you know, because I don't have facts on that. But they have an ability to come in under the ground and have completely created a sustainable society and culture versus other groups who have been here since the beginning, you know. And there's reasons for that, you know, I can't speak to, but my ideology is I like to look at people who are that exception that we all have the same odds. And I kind of just grew up with the mentality of if one person did it, then it can be done. You know, I don't know how what that one person did. I don't know how they got it done, but if one person did it, then there has to be a way. And I feel like we waste so much time trying to change minds or trying to change a system that's never going to change. It was designed to be the oppression. So while trying to go in and say, you know, we are the change that we seek and all of that, I'm for it, and I'll do what I can within that system as much as possible. I support women. I support people that are, you know, that's trying to push for a greater society. But after a while, I look at it and I go, this system was set up to do this. So do I try to waste my time changing the system, or do I try to get within my individual silo and try to
eat and survive,
and
raise your child?
Yeah,
I mean, there's certain needs. You know, I mean, you know this, you know, in sociology. I mean, in terms of survival, and I think that's what I think the future is going to.
But the system puts you in that position where, like, you are put into a silo, and while you're in the silo, you know, these folks up here are creating the legislation and policy and all this other stuff when it comes to all these big people that own the country, because, you know, they own the country and push their agenda. But we're working in a silo. But again, at the same time, is to analyze it to see if in the long term, is it going to benefit us? And the sad part is when we look at this, the wealth income gap, like there's this huge gap in in the wealth gap. It's huge in the United States. Huge. Yeah. So why is that? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm throwing Jeff under the bus again. He's $120 billion or something is what his net worth is. Right. But he pays his employees like $11 an hour, $12 an hour, whatever it is. That's what the employees are getting. But all of these profits, this is what the people get. And then someone else compared Apple. Like Apple profits, the people who are actually making the product are making this. Why is that? So it goes, Dr. King talked about this, and I don't have the exact quote, but you can look it up when it comes to automation. You put Dr. King automation, where he talks about this, where it's like if automation and property rights and all this other stuff become a priority, that's when you know society or whatever is going in a certain direction. That's kind of where we are right now. That's again, it's
capitalism straight up.
But I feel like it's always been here. Like we've always had Ford. We've always had, you know.
Because what Jamal just, you know, is talking about, to me, it sounds like a plantation. It sounds like they're saying.
I mean, think about, let's go back in the day. You know, our parents worked 30, 40 years to get a watch. You know, they worked 30, 40 years to get a little pocket square, a little something from their company and they died and they gave you, a little sheet that said he was once here and here's, you know, and these women carry it in their house, you know, to keep it for years to come. I feel like it's always been there. I think now in the society where you can see it so clearly because of social media and but I feel like since America has been here, since everyone got off the boat, there has been the oppressor and the oppressed. And so I'm just looking at it from the perspective of there's a group that wants to be dedicated to following that and keeping track of what's going on and saying you can't do this. And I'm just with the group that's saying there are massive numbers of people dying by the day, you know, mentally, emotionally, you know, actual physically, you know, because they're starving out here. So if you guys are going to do that, great. But I'm going to do this Underground Railroad type thing to say, let's go into the Midwest and let's have an honest conversation. These jobs are not coming back. So we need to get in here and we need to teach you guys how to code. We need to teach you guys how to run customer service call centers. We need to teach senior people, you know, how to use computers. You know, I read an article yesterday that said by 2025, the population under 17 will make up half of society. Wow. They would have now pushed out baby boomers, and now under 17 and millennials will be the two dominant cultures that are here. Mm-hmm. We have to figure out now what that means for our aging population, what it means for millennials, who obviously is proving they can't handle any stress or any heavy pressure at all whatsoever. You know, how do we define that? Let this group continue to fight the big, you know, big machines or the big people at the top. But then we start telling people like, look, you better figure out how to go back to your local grocer. Let's, you know, so I start telling people, I'm cognizant of what's going on in my neighborhood. I'm telling people, walk up and down your street, be intentional about going around your general big box store and trying to see what you can get from your neighborhood store. You know, start looking, I started saying, let's start looking at this carpool situation. Let's try to keep all our kids in school together who, you know, may be in the same neighborhood or the same thought process. Let's start reading to our kids and educating them on the side. Don't sit up here and say, oh my gosh, college is $100,000, $200,000 a year to go and take classes that you could have taken on the most basic level in AP English in high school, you know, or let's see how we can really take this community college thing to the next level. And I mean, there's just ways that we have to figure out how we're going to rage against the machine in the machine. That's what the slaves did. Harriet Tubman said, we're all going to die out here if some of us don't get out. If you want to stay, you stay. If you're going to snitch, you're going to get killed, you know. But if it's just 5 of us that get out, she had to be the only person to say get out.
And like you were saying, the survival skills I know Black people have, because we have demonstrated that in our, you know, in our families and in the system. I mean, fighting, you know, if you think about it, fighting a system that was totally against us.
Absolutely.
But we came out of it.
Right. But the problem is now is because if you have any type of individual division, like, for lack of a better word, mentality, you're demonized. You're looked at as a separatist. If I come and I say I'm about uplifting the Black community, or I'm uplifting the Black female community, then it's like, oh, you don't like men, or oh, you don't like white people or brown people. They do that on purpose. You know, if you say I have certain moral beliefs or thought processes, oh, you're against LGBT, or you don't believe in Christianity, or there is nothing right now that you can take a position on, and that's how they keep you dazed and confused, because it's like they get you like, well, no, that's not what I meant. Well, no, that's not what I said. Well, yes, you. So then they tell you what they want you to think. You really want to be inclusive of everyone, but everybody knows that the only thing that stands out and gets chosen is what's unique. It's never what's common. So I understand this whole kumbaya thing and let's all unite together in peace. We're never going to get anything done. There are certain things that women bring to the culture that our women are good at, but I will say it till I die. There are things that we need men to get in this culture. That doesn't mean women can't do it. It doesn't mean that we're not good at it, but we need men to stand up in certain areas of our culture. We need kids. We need technology. We need education. And if you don't allow us to isolate to particular things and have groups rally to push individual agendas, we're all going to be just little bobbleheads trying to have the thing hitting it at the arcade, trying to knock this one down and that one down, and nothing's going to get knocked down and we're going to lose. So I'm a proponent for, you don't have children. work the angle of the young professional, who doesn't have children. Don't even have to worry about what we're going to do about the school system. You handle your lane that's right there, or what you can do within the social service industry. I'm over here with kids. I can't be focused on what young adults coming out of college, how they're going to feed themselves. Right. I got to stay over here and help parents with children that are coming up. You may say, okay, reinventing yourself, after 40, this is what this means. You can speak to going back and doing continuing education or transitioning to a new line of work. They'll hear it from you different than they would hear it from me,
So you're saying that we all have a part to play.
We have a part to play. Mm-hmm. Do not allow someone to force you into this united thinking. Now, for our politicians, absolutely. They have to have a leadership mentality that takes the common good of everyone and think of it 5 years in advance. But when you try to put all of the people in, nobody's going to come to an agreement. It will not work.
You can't satisfy
everybody.
You're not going to satisfy everyone, but then thinking of slavery, that's how black folks didn't, he's not revolt, but it's like, okay, you have one plantation owner, a bunch of slaves. It's like, how did he keep them in line?
Right.
Because he divided them all up. That's the whole thing. They were all like fighting against each other. They had the person in the house and all this other stuff. So all these tactics were done to get the people to not understand their power, and that's what's happening to me, in my opinion. Now it's like you're dividing everything up with all these different issues. Right. So the people are all over the place, and they're over here liking that because, again, at the same time, if you're uniting against like everything, there's differences. Like again, there's going to be someone who's racist. Okay, like somebody's racist in the South. But I tell people the story all the time. I've been to motorcycle shows with somebody who's racist, and we're talking about a bike. You know what I'm saying? Right. That was our common situation, and we're talking about motorcycles. Mm-hmm. So it's like that's just an example. So it's like jobs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this dude could be racist, but we could be sitting at a table together talking about how we need jobs. And that's the kind of situation that needs to happen, where it's like, well, how are we all going to get some jobs? Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like, how are we going to do that? And that's one of the things that's going to unite.
So what you're saying, we're basically on a big plantation.
That's what the United States, and then it crosses over everything.
That's what causes united.
Everyone, and you see it in the media, and it keeps you oppressed.
Right, because that's their goal. I mean, that was the goal of the plantation owner, is that no, you are mine, and you're controlling. You're not going anywhere. Right. And they, like you were saying, they came up with blueprints, or really legalized tactics to keep people separate.
Look at LGBT and black community, right? And then there's this divide that they're not trying to do a situation. You don't see like a concerted effort to try to say, okay, we're uniting. It's like, I've even seen some of the LGBT community and, the heterosexual community where it's like, there's not this effort to try to it's like a division as opposed to uniting. And you see, I think
because the focus is on trying to unite versus what you were just saying. I think there's a difference between being divided and being separate. I think that we need to put back on the table. We both like this bike. You can be racist if you want to. I can be how I want to. But let's just focus on the bike. I think we spend so much time trying to get everyone to kumbaya that all we're saying right now is we need to eat. If you want to do it as your LGBTQ, if you want to do it black, if you want to do it as a single parent, if you want to do it as a baby boomer, doesn't matter. Let's just eat. But they keep us so with all of this. Well, we're supposed to be unified. We're supposed to love each other. We're supposed to whatever. And the thing about it was that if you did look at slavery, they did keep us divided, but there was somebody that was always in the house that was able to help somebody in the field, and vice versa, and they worked together even though they were completely in separate areas. So I think we have to go back to saying there's nothing wrong with being individualistic. I said it correctly.
We focus, and again, we focus, like you said. I mean, there's people, if someone is LGBT, that's fine. Someone's black, someone's Asian, so that's fine. That's fine. But the media does not do a good job, in my opinion, of trying to focus on the things that make us what we have in common.
Exactly.
They're not focusing on that. As opposed to that, they're focusing on what makes us different. That's what they're focusing on.
Because that's what sells.
And that's what I'm saying. So until that happens, we're not going to have any solutions. So, to go back what you were saying earlier in regard to focusing on some of the issues that are going on, like within the states, communities, or whatever, and you got to focus on like the little things that are going on and all sort of stuff, jobs and all the other stuff. If the Jeff Bezos and all these other folks are up here, we got to focus on what's going on. If the system is doing this, what can we do to work within the system? That has to happen, but it has to be concurrent, where it's a situation where someone is focusing on how to work within what's going on, but at the same time, we need people up here fighting that are going to be up here fighting against and try to change to make this actually work for those individuals. But at the same time, we can't just say, until this changes, there's nothing we can do. No, we have to figure out what we can do within it. But then also we have to have these people up here that are going to fight up against it, but not taking the money, calling people out, saying this doesn't work, this model isn't working, and it's just not. It's sad. I don't see the faith in a candidate that I'm have faith in that's going to do that.
So what do you think, Jamal? Like, okay, 2020 is coming up. Mm-hmm. What do you think? And we have, all the candidates becoming, coming out. So what do you think the people's strategy should be? I mean, in terms of, should we, get on the bandwagon with all these politicians, or should it be a time that, people are saying, wait a second, no, we need this, we need that, to put pressure on them? It
has to happen now. I know I had a discussion with someone and they got upset with me because I said, they're like, well, you're just going to have to pick something. And I'm like, well, the people that are before me now, it's like, I don't see it. I don't see if these people are even going to change anything. They've been career politicians this whole time, and if they are going to say something that's going to resonate with the people, I'm just confident it's a strategy. But once they get in, are they actually going to actually do anything? They're saying they know what to say. They know the talking points. But once you get in, is your character the kind of a person, or who you are, a person who's going to actually fight and work for the people? Mm-hmm. Was demonstrated in the past? No, because you guys are taking money. You're doing this. You're doing that. So, people change. I'm like, okay, well, maybe people change. But they say, well,
you're in the system.
So they'll say, well, you just have to choose. You have to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, then when is this going to happen? Oh, we just have to do this. I'm like, if we don't take a stand now, it's never going to change. Like, there has to be somewhat of a stand. Like, we have to be putting people in there that are going to take a stand to be an example, even if it's just talking points. Someone's just going to say, you know what, I'm calling out this, I'm calling out that. I was just in a meeting down in the city hall. This dude came in here and tried to give me $50,000. You know what I mean? That kind of a person. I'm just making stuff up. Or I was in the state capitol and this lobbyist walked in my office talking about this project they're trying to green light. So he told me he was going to give me 100, whatever it is. These are the kind of things. When people hear that, they're like, oh my God, this person is telling the truth. Mm-hmm. So these are the individuals that we need on that end, fighting the legislative side against this stuff that's happening, be it the healthcare industry, if it's going to be, the Bezos and all these other people, the people that are lobbying all the money to Washington and to our candidates, there has to be a stand that's going to be taken to stop it.
And you want the politicians to take the stand?
They have to. I mean, they're the legislators. I mean, and that's the part. And the people have to understand. Like, look, when you see these people, you have to look into. You can't get into identity politics. You can't fall for that. You can't fall for the identity politics. You have to be able to be a critical thinker and think about this person's record. You got to think about where they stood 5 years ago, and now think about what they're talking about. You got to think of who they're in bed with. This is the stuff you need to ask. Just because the person knows how to do the electric slide, you're going to vote them in office? You know what I mean? Just because the person was eating at a barbecue place, you're going to vote them in office? This is what they do. Just because somebody smoked a little weed 2-3 years ago, you're going to vote them in office. That's what they're playing. You start looking at what they're doing to try to identify with people as opposed to saying, you know what? No, I'm fighting for your jobs. I'm not getting into it. It doesn't, like a therapist. I'm going to say this. Like a therapist. I learned this in grad school. They said, does it make a difference if somebody is black, Latino, whoever, to give therapy to someone who's of color? Does it make a difference? Should it make a difference? And the answer, people will say, well, yeah, it does, because then it might be able to resonate with them. And they go, that's false. Because the thing is, you have to be able to leave yourself at the door. If you are a therapist, you cannot come in there like this. You have to, the client is the one who leads. So as a politician, they don't leave themselves at the door. That's the thing. You have to leave yourself at the door. The client is the people, so you have to be able to say, you're listening to them and to their voice. And then you ask yourself, do we have people out there that are doing that? No, that's not happening. You look at the records. You look what they're voting for. Did we have any input on them voting for this? No. That when they're in the House and they voted on this, did the people know about that? No. Mm-hmm. The whole thing with the deregulation of the bank deal that happened in March of 2018, where they looked to deregulate it again, that wasn't public.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That wasn't something that the people were like, had some input on. It happened.
Mm-hmm. So the thing is that when I'm sleeping in my car and I'm working 2 jobs and I'm going home to sleep in my car, I am not checking to see how did she vote today or how did he vote today. Right. The only thing that I'm going to see is the clickbait that says, oh, he came down to the community and ate hot dogs with me, you know? And so I have to, try to remind people when I share with them that you have to remember that they're jumping through those quote unquote hoops. They're doing those TV appearances to get your attention. So make sure that it's worthwhile. You can't keep responding to this clickbait. You can't, when I go and I sit somewhere with people all the time, I don't have time to hear about, how you feel about the community. Let's talk about regular issues, what you're going to do about education, what you're going to do about healthcare, what are you going to do about globalization. There are like 3 or 4 things that I choose to only participate in discussion on. Other than that, you don't get in it.
That goes back to, I remember this, Jamal, your 20-year plan.
Right. The 20-year plan, real quick, was, if we have a 20-year plan on how to develop the city of LA with Metro and transit, where's the concurrent 20-year plan for people? And what does that look like? Right. Like, or even from now today. Okay, so let's do a 20-year plan of what the individuals in the state of California, the city of LA, what is it going to take to get them in a situation where we close that wealth gap, where they can afford some of the gap, the prices, or are we only anticipating for new people to come in here and replace them who are able to afford what's going on? Do we want to create a state that makes it where it's sustainable and they can participate?
But it goes back to turning off the noise, because the problem is we are trying to get politicians and people in office to fix our problems until we fix ourselves.
Right. Wow. We have really been through it. We just have like a couple more minutes left. And real quick, new things happening in Leimert Park, community-wise, any announcements?
There's a homeless resource fair going on March the 22nd, I believe. I'll confirm that. Okay. But that is going on with the city of LA. They're helping with housing, jobs, healthcare. That is going to be, March the 2nd, homeless resource fair.
Great. Well, this is the end of our podcast. And again, I thank Jamal Jones and A. Couture, for being here and just recapping on how we're going to move forward in 2019. And it seems like we're going to have to rely on ourselves and back to our community and really be positive and keep stepping and keep moving and moving. So again, till next time, keep it positive. Town Hall Cafe, get up and get engaged.